Hi, it's Thursday, June 5th, and we're tracking a disturbance now in the tropical West Pacific for potential development this week. The system is now dubbed Invest 92W by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, and we'll be monitoring it over the coming days as it tracks northwest towards the Philippines, as models have been catching on to for a few days now, potential for the system to develop. And it seems like models are coming into more of an agreement now that the system will have a substantial chance to form and then on bring impact to the Philippines and points north. So as of right now, the system is fairly disorganized. It is a broad trough axis. We can tell this if we look at the low-level cloud motion. If you look just west of Guam, we have southeasterly flow coming up towards the northwest, turning into easterly flow as it meets with the trade winds further north. And then we see some evidence on the western side of all this convection with these clouds turning back towards the south and southeast, denoting the northern edge of the trough axis that the system is associated with. And you can also see the southern edge of this with all this westerly flow south of Palau. And so this is a broad trough axis that is going to take time to consolidate. Now, this system, unlike a couple of systems that we had last month, will have time to develop. You can see it's got plenty of ocean water ahead of it. It's not expected to come ashore into the Philippines for several days, if at all. And so this system will have a better chance at forming, certainly the best chance we've seen of a disturbance this year in the Western Pacific at developing into a storm. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to have no obstacles in its way. There will be a pretty clear obstacle, and you can see it a little bit here in this visible imagery with these upper level cirrus clouds coming down out of the northwest. It's better seen on this water vapor imagery. Here's the center of the storm, and you can see northwest where it's tracking. We have all this northeasterly flow on the eastern edge of a high pressure system draped over China, and this is going to be inducing some easterly shear on the system as it runs right into this flow. And at that point, it's going to be up to the system to make the environment better for itself, modulate the environment to allow it a better environment to form into a tropical cyclone. And what I mean by that, and I'll show you that here on the GFS upper level winds, we're going to start off at what the system is in now. This is the analysis of the model. You can see where the system is now, the white coloring there showing you light flow aloft, and here's that northeasterly flow with this bridge over China. And as the system continues tracking northeast, this is by Friday local time, so tomorrow, the low is here east of the Philippines, and we still have this easterly flow cutting directly on top of it. Now, for it to modulate the environment, it's going to need to keep convection going, keep thunderstorms going on top of it like we have today. Because what this induces, or what it shows, is plentiful rising air in the environment surrounding this trough axis. And what happens is the outflow from that, the latent heat release from all these thunderstorms, induces clockwise spin in the form of an anticyclone or high pressure at the top of the atmosphere. And what this can do, if it keeps all this convection up and it doesn't get destroyed by the shear, is it can begin to modulate the upper level winds surrounding it. So you can see in this model run that all this easterly flow east of the Philippines begins to decrease in magnitude by the time we're here on Sunday morning local time. The system is still centered here east of the Philippines, and this northerly flow, or northeasterly flow rather, has completely subsided, and we're now even seeing on the southern side more clockwise rotation or curvature in streamlines and stronger flow south of the storm. And this is a scenario on the GFS where the system has modulated the environment enough to where it's now in a low shear environment and able to become a tropical storm and eventually intensify on the model. Now, that's what the system needs to do to form. Now, the GFS has been very aggressive on the system, as it usually is. It is the most aggressive global model, I'd say. The European is much more lenient on this, not showing much development at all. And this is another bias of the European model. It is typically pretty weak with these systems. I think the most reasonable expectation right now is something in the middle, to where we see something that forms, or at least tries to form, by the late part of the weekend into early next week. But it does not form as early as the GFS shows. The GFS at that time showed development on Saturday or Sunday. And it's not as late as the European. The European is showing development towards more mid next week. I think right now the best time for development is going to be early next week, as that will be enough time for the system to consolidate the broad axis that it has right now, and that should allow it enough time to modulate the upper level of environment, like I just showed you, to make it more favorable for itself to develop. Though, of course, we'll have to see how things go. Something that does go in the system's favor, being with this broad axis that we see here, is that these broad systems can tend to be more resilient to the impacts of moderate wind shear, which we have northwest. So that may allow the system a better chance to form into a storm. But the downside of these broader systems is that they take a longer time to form. Now, we don't have much to talk about within the forecast of this, but I do want to briefly mention where the system will be going as it continues tracking northwest. The expectation is that it will continue to gain latitude. That's because of the pattern over Eastern Asia. We can see the initial reason the system is coming northwest is this area of high pressure in the subtropics, carrying the system northwest initially, but it's going to start to run into this trough that's digging in the mid-levels in eastern China. And this will begin to set a western edge on the subtropical ridge, and it's going to begin to lift this system towards the north. And there's a little bit of uncertainty onto exactly when this northward turn will occur, because it does heavily depend on how strong the system is. If the system is stronger, like the GFS shows, it's going to be more inclined to make that turn earlier. So the GFS, for example, I can show you this, pulls the system up into Taiwan and the Japanese islands, for example. The European is much weaker, and so it's not going to turn north as fast, and it's going to continue to track west. And for this run particularly, it does eventually develop on the eastern end of Luzon and then lift north into the Japanese islands. But we've seen some runs in the European model, specifically the European AI model, that has tried to push the system into the South China Sea before making that northward turn. So there is still a bit of spread, as you'd expect at this range. We're talking about, midweek by the time it would be coming up into any of these regions of the world. But we'll have to see exactly how things go. Now, eventually it is going to make that northward turn, because with this trough coming in, there is going to be a surface front boundary. You can see this in this yellow streak from South Korea into China. It has southeasterly flow on the eastern flank, northeasterly flow on the backside. And so even if this system is weak and comes into the South China Sea, it's eventually going to run into this frontal boundary. So that's going to force it to turn north at some point. So the general expectation for next week in areas like the Philippines, eastern China, Taiwan, and the southern Japanese islands is that we can see increased shower and thunderstorm activity in the region, with potential for a tropical cyclone to be active, and one that could be intensifying if it is formed by that point. But we're too far out to say for sure exactly what's going to happen. But just be aware that the system may be developing as we head into next week. And I'll have more videos, of course, as the system continues tracking northwest and developing. That's what I've got for today. That's all I'll go in depth on right now with the system. As I mentioned, there's still a lot of uncertainty, and we'll talk about more detailed stuff with the system as it develops more, as it tracks northwest. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.